Number 8, he has obstructed administration of justice by refusing his consent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. It says assent there, which means his consent for the laws. He's refused. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. In other words, the judges, which were judges, had to do it the way he said and make no rulings other than what he said. And so on his will, for the tenure of their office and the amount and payment of their salaries. 10, he has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat our substance. He sent soldiers to stay in their homes. He took advantage of the people. He pushed them and pushed them and pushed them and pushed them and pushed them. He wanted to push them into submission, but he didn't do it. Number 11, he has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislation. And how would you like this if the government said to you, listen, this week you're going to house 10 soldiers, and you're going to feed them, take care of them for a month. You know how much those guys eat? Just your food bill alone would run you, wouldn't it? So that's what was happening. Number 12, he has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil powers. He was trying to rule them by military power, which we know today is what? When you go in and you proclaim what to take over the country? You proclaim what? Martial law. There you go. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Hope y'all are making notes on some of these, so when we come back and talk about them later, you can remember which ones we are seeing today. They're just about being repeated just in a different time in kind of a different way. Okay, now, we start with number 13, and this was the colonies' rights to self-rule were really violated. Okay? So now 13 down through 22, we're going to talk about the colonies and the rights they were violated. 13, he has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. In other words, their Constitution they had drawn up back in those days, what the legislators worked off of. And he has drawn up foreign rules. He changed the game. And unacknowledged by our laws, giving his approval to their acts of pretended legislation. They had legislation, they pretended that what they were doing, and it had no power. Now, 14, and repeat this again, so for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, which it says they didn't have enough room at the barracks. Well, so the king brought in multitudes of troops. And remember, some of them were German mercenaries. Remember that? German mercenaries. He brought in a bunch of them. And so they had to quarter them for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. For protecting them by having a mock trial. We had a trial. We found him not guilty, you know. And I don't know what happened to those who committed the Boston Massacre, do you? I don't know what happened to those who committed the Boston Massacre, but I've got a feeling some of those redcoats got shot. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. In other words, he cut the colonies off totally from trading with other countries and shut them down. For imposing taxes on us without our consent, are better known as taxation without representation. I said before, we have taxation today with inadequate representation. Inadequate representation. For opposing taxes on us without our consent. Number 18. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of a trial by jury. One of our basic constitutional rights is a speedy trial, right? And so these guys were getting put in a jail and they were kept there for a long time. John Arlen, the guy I mentioned earlier, he spent 5 months in a Culpeper prison. And he had all kinds of atrocities committed against him, tried to kill him. Number 18, for depriving us of many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. 19, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Charge them on something, get them out of the country, put them on a ship and send them to Britain. How long did it take to go by ship? You've probably gone, 3 or 4 months before you can get back? So they get you out of the country for 3 or more months on pretended charges. 20, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighborhood providence established therein as arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for the introduction the same absolute rule in these colonies. The king was setting himself up to be the absolute ruler. Yeah, we really do to a certain point, don't we? We really do. Yeah. Yeah, true. Hope you're writing those down, okay? Okay. 21, for taking away our charters. They had charters that they'd made up. They'd been ruling themselves. They did really good until America got rich. And British needed some money. What are they going to do? They go to the colonies and say, we're going to get some money. So either you're going to pay it, we're going to get it from you. So they start squeezing them. So they took away their charters, abolished the most valuable laws, and altered fundamentally the forms of our government. They changed the government, and they put in dictatorship instead of free law, free rule. 22, for suspending our legislature and declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate. For in all cases whatsoever, they said, you have no power, no authority, no more. We will legislate you, we'll make the laws for you, and you will live by them. Now, the last 5 is the king's actions to abandon the colonies. Now, kind of listen to this. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. This abrogated means his formal surrender of power, abandon, or renounce, or resign. So he has totally dumped the colonies and left them on their own, trying to take them over, trying to force them to come under his reign. 24, he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He killed people, he burnt the towns, and he ravaged the coast. Now, what kind of government is that? 25, he is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the work of death, dissolution, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and periodic sacrificing paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. That's what King George did. And they treated us like, not even like stepchildren, treated us like nobody. And he wanted to take us over, totally take over our country. 26, he has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas, to bear arms against our country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. So he had taken the fellow captives on the high seas and forced them to execute their friends and their brethren. Ladies and gentlemen, what point do we take a stand? Where do we stop? Do we do like Frederick Muhlenberg, wait till they burn our church down? We've already got laws in place today, which is the hate crime bill. Remember that? The hate crime bill? And you know what it says, basically? If you say anything against homosexuals and those type things like that, and you can become responsible for it and even go to prison for preaching it, for speaking it, for talking about it. That's it. It's in the books.
Most of those hate crime laws in other countries, though, if you say anything against Israel.
Yeah? Or anything against, yeah, or anything against Muslims and things.
All about anything.
Yeah, yeah, true. So this is what it was all about. And we take this personally, don't we? Yeah. We're talking about our Constitution. We're talking about our laws. We're talking about our Declaration of Independence. We're talking about the laws that give us the freedom we have today, what little we do have. And if we don't use what little we have right now and stretch it as far as we can to get back our country, then we will lose it. And that may not be very far in the future unless we take a stand. Would y'all agree with that? Go ahead. Wait, Rule.
Hello. I haven't heard one thing yet. I agree with you entirely. I haven't heard one thing yet, though, that's different from what happened to the South, from what happened to Germany, from what's happening now in the Mideast. You always crush your enemy to where they can't make a step, have no rights left. You can't even open your mouth and object. So, I mean, what you say is exactly true, but it's standard operating procedure. When you conquer, you're the conqueror. Mm-hmm. So, only thing left is rebellion.
Exactly. And we're going to rebel at the voting booth is our first step. the voting booth, and then after that, what were you going to say, CC? Rule?
The voting booth, yes. We're not advocating a revolution, but it may come to that.
A
But we
revelation
do.
of voting.
We do have, I'm going to make a little pitch for my organization, the Texas Citizens Convention for Sovereignty. We're having a meeting next Thursday at the Chateau Bristow in Emory, Texas, over by the courthouse, 7 o'clock, Thursday, July 7th. And it is people taking a stand. And we will hold our own citizens convention for these resolutions that need to be addressed and take a stand against our government. This is not protest. This is actually a legal action that we will be doing. We'll be electing delegates to go to the convention. Thank you, John.
Good, good. That's good. That's what we're going to have to do. And this convention she's talking about is for the sovereignty, and it has to do with your property rights as well. And so many of our property rights have been totally violated. You don't own your own property. You know that, don't you? Pardon?
You lease it from the government.
Basically, if you don't pay your taxes, what happens? They come and get it. And they can come get it some other ways too, can't they?
What do they do down on the coast? They took over some property. I was asking her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I bet you know this. It's back about 2 years ago. The government took over some warehouse area in Houston, and where the ships came in, the port, and they sold it to a private enterprise because they made more tax off of it.
Yeah, that's. So there's a lot of our laws need correcting. Amen. Okay, next few minutes we're going to talk about something, and it is called the Articles of Confederation. You're familiar with that? You want to teach this?
No.
The Articles of Confederation, I'm going to sum it up. There's about 11 of them. And the Articles of Confederation come after we established that we were in a battle and that we were separating ourselves from British rule. And you got to understand, our forefathers loved Britain. They raised up under Britain rule. That's all they knew. They've had freedoms all these years. The government left them alone. They were prospering. They were charging low taxes. The people were doing well. Their basic constitutional rights were in place. And then all of a sudden the King of England decides he needs money, and so what does he do? He starts prosecuting. And you're right. When you take over a country, you try to destroy it, and you make it to where they can't rebel against you. The only thing is the king didn't figure what was going to happen because he didn't think the colonies would do it. Okay, the articles and the summaries, basically, let's go over these for just a moment because these are important. Establish the name of the Confederation with these words: the style of this Confederacy shall be the United States of America. Okay? That was the first article. Second, they assert the equality of the separate states with the Confederation government. That is, each state retains its sovereign freedom and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated. So each state maintains their own rights, which are supposed to have today. Yeah, supposed to is right, yeah. Does not call the United States of America a nation or government, but instead says, the states hereby servely enter into a firm league of, listen to this, friendship. I thought that was pretty neat. I'll read that again. Does not call the United States a nation or government, but instead says, the said states hereby servely enter into a firm league of friendship with each other, for their common defense, the security of their liberties, their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them, of any of them on any account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatever. I love that. Friendship. That's pretty cool, wasn't it? I read that earlier and I thought, man, that was just really cool. I thought didn't y'all really think that's good? It struck a note with me.